Hello there, friends, and welcome back to Sesh Cast. My name is GLDLX. This is Sesh Cast, a cannabis podcast for cannabis sessions. And today I'm going to do that thing where I just kind of throw some stuff out there into the ether, and I hope that later I go back and listen to myself and take my own advice for once. But before we get into that, let me get into this. I am GLDLX. If you've never listened to this show before, thanks for coming and hanging out. I really appreciate it. This is just a podcast where I get high and talk about stuff and just kind of let my brain go for a little while and explore the way my brain works and put that wild and out thought out there for folks. So that's what you've got coming for you today. If you've never listened in before, and if you have listened in before, thanks for coming back. Always super appreciated. Much love for sure. I've been getting a bunch of nice messages on Instagram lately, which has been awesome because I have not been spending a lot of time on Instagram. And I'll get into why here in a little while during the episode, but I've been sending a lot of stickers out, and folks have been getting stickers. I should have pulled up names before I started recording just so I could say like, oh, this, such and such said they got their stickers, such and such, but I forgot, so I'm really sorry. Maybe I'll remember to do that next episode. But folks just getting stickers and sending me pictures of where they're putting them up has been really, really cool. So thank you guys for all that. And thank you for the support as always. It's beyond appreciated. I have I think 2 stickers left when I'm putting this episode out. So if you want one, shoot me a DM on the Instagrams and I will send one to you ASAP. And that'll be it for the stickers for a little while. I'll order more for sure. I'm going to give it a little while before I order more. I need a good reason to order more. I mean, I was going to HempFest, so it was a good idea to have stickers, and then I didn't end up giving any of them away, but that's a whole nother story from a different episode. Whichever the HempFest recap episode is, you can look at that one. 34? I think it was 34. 34. Talked about it in that episode. So I don't 100% remember what I was talking about right there, and I'm sorry about that, but I'm very high. Yeah, stickers, that was what it was. I will order more stickers again at some point, so if you want one, just let me know, and I will make sure that that happens at some point in this weird timeline that we all exist in. Today, I am smoking on some Diamond OG, which I've really been loving, and I'm really disappointed that this is basically my last bowl of it. I think I might have one more bowl, maybe. It's just been a really good indica, a good end of the night weed, which I really appreciate. I am always an indica smoker over a sativa smoker. It's just my preference. And I know that the whole indica sativa classification is all kind of ridiculous anyway. It doesn't mean much, but I like body high as opposed to mental high. It's just my preference. So I've really enjoyed it. I would not say that at least the cut I have has any astounding flavor or taste. It's just kind of weed, but it's good. I like it. And I've been happy with the effects. I have also been hitting really hard on some cartridge in my vape, and I'm very stoned to start this episode off. So that's what I'm smoking on. That's how high I am, and I am using my Nobody piece today. It was what was on the table, and it's so late. Oh my god, it's 2 a.m. on the day this episode comes out. I'm again recording in the 11th hour here, and I just needed something to smoke out of, and this is what I had. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a hit of this, and then I will get into more of the episode and stuff. But I'm gonna hit this now. Cheers. Good lord. I talked about my Instagram earlier. I didn't say I'm at Sesh Cast on Instagram, if you want to give me a follow there. Okay, episode. I want to get into this. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I finally just decided to sit down and do an episode about it, because I thought this would be a good topic if I could keep it going. I didn't intend on recording it at 2 a.m. on a Thursday, but, here we are. So the name of today's episode is Overwhelmed. And I want to talk about a really specific feeling that I have so far in my life met one other person who I have expressed this feeling with, and they've shared the same feeling. But I don't think that it's just like me and this guy. I think this is a lot of people. I just haven't heard a lot of people talk about it before. Or at least I haven't talked about it with a lot of people before. So, um, this feeling that I get when I'm overwhelmed and how it affects me, and sort of how I'm dealing with it right now. And as always, like this this episode and this podcast are not meant to be me just talking about my struggles or my life or my existence. Some people are into that sort of thing, and that's not really where I'm going. I just am talking about like the way that it's been making me feel lately and how I think I can apply that into some sort of advice that I would like to give myself. And I just wanted to sort of share that with you. So I have met this one other guy who has this very similar feeling as I do, and it always really manifests when I'm super overwhelmed. And I've been very overwhelmed lately, which is why I haven't spent a lot of time on Instagram, which is a bummer because I do enjoy Instagram. I enjoy social media. I just haven't had time and I haven't had the mental energy to put into interacting with another social media. I have my personal social medias, I have my work social medias for the radio station, and then I've got the social medias for the podcast and social medias for other podcasts and organizations and stuff that I help with and work with. I just have a lot of screen time in my life, and I like to not look at a screen all the time. And so the podcast, Sesh Cast in particular, has sort of been the Instagram that has been faltering or has been noticing the most of that absence. And it's just one of those things where it's like I'm very overwhelmed and I need something to go, and I get into this specific headspace, and that specific headface woof, this specific headspace is this feeling that I get that the consequences of me doing something late will be worse than continuing not to do something. I think that's. Hold on. I need to turn my laptop. I. It's just really. It's pointed right in my face, and it's very bright. And it was just really like making my one eyeball hurt. So, anyway, the this feeling that I get that I really struggle to overcome, and when when I have some deadline or I have something that I am procrastinating doing, or even something just like the Instagram where I don't spend a lot of time on it, I get really overwhelmed with this feeling that the consequences of doing something late, or someone's reaction or people's reaction when I do something after I was supposed to have it done, will be worse than if I just continue to not do the thing that I was supposed to do. But it's just this stupid cycle, because if you continue to not do the thing, it's not going to make their reaction any better when it does finally get done. But it doesn't stop the thing from needing to get done. And I struggle to overcome that. And like I said, I've talked specifically to one other person who has shared this exact same feeling as me. So I'm sure that there are other people out there. And if this is you, I'm on a very specific level, and I hope that some of you understand this feeling where, like, you have a project that was due. You have some sort of deadline, and it's 2 or 3 days after the deadline and you haven't turned your project in yet. And so instead of sitting down to do the project so you could get it done, you keep procrastinating to do the project because you feel like if you turn the project in 3 days late, you're going to get, yelled at, or you're going to face some major consequence. And so instead of facing that major consequence, you would rather just not turn in the project, or not do the project. You don't do the project so that you don't have to face the consequence. But that is only making the eventual consequence worse, and often it's this dead end road outcome where you're going to eventually have to face some sort of consequence, either because you have passed the deadline or it is just no longer conceivable as something you could do. And um, that headspace is something that has really been a driving force of my, I would say, anxiety for the last couple years. But I think longer than that, I think kind of my whole life, this is something that I've struggled with, where I, excuse me, wow. So I'm very, very, very high tonight, and very tired. There it is. I did an episode about that, how I'm not supposed to say that. I'm sorry. Um, I get to this point where I would rather just avoid somebody being mad at me, or avoid facing some sort of consequence than actually just do the thing I need to do. So that's the headspace that I'm talking about. And I get there, and I think that has been driving my anxiety over the last couple years, because it is this cycle. You don't feel good about not doing the thing. I don't feel good about not completing the task I was supposed to complete. I just obsess over it all the time, and it always drives me crazy. But then I'm so fearful of the consequence that I never just do it, which in turn just makes it worse. And so that's something that just ramps up my anxiety, and just gets me going. And the more overwhelmed I get, the more things I start to miss, the more deadlines I start to slide off of, and that is what starts to just kill me and make me so anxious and drive me so crazy. And that's something that I've been experiencing just so much lately. And it's been making it really hard to work on things like the podcast, Instagram, and just the social media outreach, and even things like cleaning my room, and just, oh God, so many things. And so I am trying really, really hard to dedicate myself here going forward to just completing tasks, even if they're late, because I have this stack of things, like a huge stack of things that just sits on this desktop beside my desk, like a desk side table, if you will. And it's just my stack of things to do, and it only ever gets bigger. And there's so many things in there that if I sat down, I think I could knock it out in an afternoon. But I don't. I'm scared of it. It's like this monster that lives in the corner of my room. And I'm going to try really hard going forward to push myself to accomplish some of those tasks. And I think that the advice that I have is that, in my experience, when I am expecting someone to fulfill a deadline for me, I am always happier that I have the thing than I am mad that it's late. If I'm not feeling great about your input because it's late, it being later doesn't make me feel any better as the person expecting the input. But when I get it, I'm typically happier that I at least finally have my hands on it than I am angry about it, or at least I'm trying to be. And so I think that is kind of a reality for a lot of people. So maybe this advice is twofold. If you are the person expecting someone to fulfill your deadline, just try and be happy that you get the thing. Encourage people to do better. Let's do some positive reinforcement on the world here. If you're expecting somebody to fulfill a deadline for you and they miss that deadline, don't feel like you need to beat up on them once they turn the thing in. I mean, obviously, it's great that they turned it in. That's important. It sucks that it's late, but just positive encouragement to get people to get things in, so that those of us who uh, are bad about turning things in, are bad about coming through on deadlines. I'm struggling to separate this from anything but school to talk about it. It's a feeling, and if you've had this feeling before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And my metaphors don't matter. I hope. Um, if you don't have this feeling, I'm struggling to explain it in any way other than school. If you're the person who needs to fulfill a deadline, let's all push ourselves to do a little bit better. And even after we miss those deadlines, let's keep those things at the top of our priority list and not just push them away. That is something that I'm going to try and do. I feel like I just rambled an entire episode in like 10 minutes. Oh boy. I'm going to smoke some of this weed so I can slow down here for a minute. And then I'll come back and I'll talk some more, I think. I hope that your day is going well. I hope that things are super good for you and that you are not overwhelmed. And if you are overwhelmed, I hope that you can start to tack some things off your plate and just, tack some things off your plate. Good Lord. You can just knock some things off the list and just continue to move forward and power through so that you can get to a point where you feel more at equilibrium. Because being overwhelmed is lame. I'm going to smoke some weed now. I hope that you can as well. Cheers, friends. I went out to this sleazy diner tonight because it's like one of my favorite restaurants in town. It's just this greasy 24/7 365 kind of sketchy diner, but they have the killer breakfast, man. No matter what time of day it is, no matter what day it is, like you can get breakfast at 3 in the morning on Christmas Day there if you want to, and it's the bomb. And it is not making me feel very good right now. Good Lord. Oh boy. I don't feel great at all. I'm having some major indigestion, heartburn type things going on. So I'm just trying to drink some water right now. I will be right back with you. Most people would cut that out of a podcast. But no, not this stoner. This stoner leaves all that shit in. Because it's fun. I don't know. It's just part of the podcast experience. It's part of smoking along with me. That was the whole idea for this podcast. Was if you needed something to listen to while you smoked, you were sitting home alone at the end of the day and you didn't have anything to do but smoke weed and you just wanted to mellow out and chill. I'm here for you. That's the whole goal of the show. So I'm leaving all that in, and you can just jam out to some music for a little while. But I'm back now, and I'm gonna talk about being overwhelmed some more, I guess. I think one thing that I've been trying to do here over the last, oh gosh, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, maybe this summer, to improve my mental health while I am overwhelmed, is to compartmentalize things and to just try and think of one individual thing at a time. That has definitely been a major goal for me. To just pick one thing on the list and focus solely on that and move on down the list as things come up, as opposed to trying to multitask 8 million things all at once and try and knock a bunch of things off the list at once. Which is weird because I'm a pretty multitasky person. I like having a number of things to do. And I'm always listening to music while I'm working and, I'm doing 2 things at once all the time, which people say is bad, but whatever. But when it comes to me being overwhelmed, I think that multitasking or trying to multitask ends up hurting that state for me, or making that state worse. Just because when I have so much on my list, if I'm bouncing all over the place, it's taking me an eternity to accomplish anything. And so I look at the list and I think, all right, hold on. I'm going to try and put this in some like algebraic math. Don't run away if you don't like math. I'm going to try and make this accessible. So you have the, oh my God, I completely forgot what I was going to say. Oh boy, that was rough. That was unfortunate. I had a good thing going there. I know it. I really do. Oh, come back. Oh, it's so gone. I was talking about being overwhelmed, and I was talking about, it's just gone. That whole part of my memory has just disappeared. Oh, I was talking about thinking about one thing at a time. Okay, all right, I'm back. So, you have all of these things on your list, and it's taking you, you're working on 5 things, and it's taking you 3 or 4 weeks to complete one of your 5 things because you're bouncing all over the place. And so you look at that list of 5 things and think, well, it took a full 3 or 4 years or whatever, a year, 3, 4 months, weeks, whatever the hell I just said. It takes that long to complete one thing, and it's going to take that long to complete all these other things. I'm never, ever going to get this list done. But if you sit down and just like focus on one single thing, I'm guessing, and I have learned from my experience, that I will get that one single thing done faster and can move on to the next thing in a much more efficient way than if I was multitasking and doing all of those things. So when I get overwhelmed, I try really hard to pick one thing and say, all right, this is the thing that I'm going to work on today. Like, this is the problem I'm going to solve. This is going to be my priority. And if I just knock one thing off at a time and think of it very systematically of like, all right, I have this thing. This is today's problem. Once I get this done, I'm going to move on to the next thing. And I typically only plan, 1 or 2 steps ahead so that I don't just rebuild up a to-do list. But the more I can focus on one thing at a time, the more efficiently I feel like I can work on those one things. And that's very helpful for me when I am feeling overwhelmed. Just a way to quickly knock things off the list. And so I would encourage that sort of mentality when it comes to being overwhelmed. If you are someone who often feels like you just have way too much going on for your brain to handle, try just hitting one thing at a time. Oh, I was going to talk about, I kind of realized this before I recorded this episode, because I had sat down to press record, or I hit record on my laptop, and it was recording, and I just hadn't really looked away from the screen yet, and I ended up just watching the timer hit a minute, just going for a minute. And I was thinking to myself, if, like, it took forever for it to reach a minute, just that minute felt so long, and I feel like that all the time, because in radio, a minute is a long time, but, you just, when all you're doing is sitting and looking at the minute pass or watching the time pass, it goes so slowly. But when you're trying to do a whole bunch of things, like if I said, all right, here's a bunch of minute to win it challenges for you to do and to focus on, that minute is going to go by so much quicker to you. So I think that it's important to relate that back to working on a bunch of things and say, when all I'm doing is sitting and watching time pass, when all I'm doing is focusing on one single thing, one important piece of my to-do list, that is going to, I'm going to get so much more out of that. Sort of like I was talking about, I think in the time episode, talking about how, oh, come on, come back. Talking about how what you do in a length of time is what will help with your memory of that time, is what will make that bit of time more enjoyable, is what will make that bit of time more meaningful. And so when you're focusing on just one thing at a time, um, you are going to have so much more of your own focus to put into that one thing. Oh gosh, that was. I know I lost it and I tried to pull it back together at the end. I don't know if it worked. I'm sorry for what I just said if it didn't make any sense. And if it was prolific, then you're right. I'm great. I know. Gosh, I'm so high. I'm so high and it's so late. Oh, this is the life, man. This is what you do sometimes. You just kick it and you smoke weed and record a podcast at 2 in the morning. Cheers. I really do think that compartmentalization thing has a good leg to stand on. I think that is a solid tactic that I would recommend trying for folks. And I know that there are a lot of people out there who don't like to compartmentalize things. I suppose that's okay if that's just not the way your brain works. I don't want to force you to do something that doesn't seem to vibe for you, but that is definitely what helps me the most when I am super overwhelmed. Because what doesn't help me is procrastinating on things and letting things stack up and then being afraid to do them later. It's just so easy to put so much on your plate in today's age, like there's just so much more going on. There's so many more things to be committed to. Like sort of the example that I've been coming back to in this whole podcast is Instagram. And I think back 10, 15 years ago, obviously I was 10 years old, but in 2008, Instagram was not nearly the piece of everyone's lives that it is here in 2018. I mean, there are national news stories covering what folks post on their Instagram, and that just wasn't true 10 or 15 years ago. 2003, there wasn't even an Instagram. The 2003, there were like barely something that could be considered smartphones. I don't know that you could consider them smartphones. They just could connect to the internet. It's just wild. Like, there's so much more to take up pieces of you and to take up pieces of your energy and to take up pieces of your focus and to take up parts of your time. There's just so much more in a day than there was 10 or 15 years ago. And again, obviously I was like 10 years old, 10 or 15 years old. But even then, I don't think that folks my age were getting as overwhelmed with all of this stuff because there just wasn't as much stimulation. I have social media that I have to keep track of. I have news that I have to keep up on that's sent to the computer in my pocket every second of every day. I'm in a sense never allowed to unplug, and it starts to consume you. And when you add in your work schedule and then an exercise schedule and then any sort of social life schedule, just basic pieces of human need, it starts to become insanely overwhelming. There's just so much going on. And so what's the answer to that? Is the answer to take ourselves offline and separate ourselves from the internet? Maybe. I know that there's a lot of benefit in that. Every time I do it, I feel great about it. Every time I'm somewhere where I can't justifiably use my phone, like, good God, it's the best. Or I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Where I can justifiably say that I can't use my phone. I'm like, oh, I was in the mountains. There's no service. I was on the beach. There's no service. Whatever. Like any time where I can just say, no, I'm not going to look at my phone all day long. That's a great day. because there's just so much. Yeah, like your phone demands so much energy of you. Your social life demands so much energy of you. The world in 2018 and its perception of forced connectivity just will ask so much of you. And so then you start to add on all the things you have to do to take care of yourself. And then you start adding on the things that you want to do to take care of yourself. And on top of all of that, you got to factor in like personal hygiene and physical health and mental health and all of these things. It's so overwhelming. Life itself is overwhelming. And I'm not sure that we acknowledge that enough. I think that we could say that more and tell people like, yeah, it's okay to be overwhelmed. You got a lot of shit going on right now. And so I don't ever try to say like, just calm down, because if you are feeling overwhelmed, it's because you've got a lot going on. And whether the amount of things you have going on is something that I feel like I would consider a lot, whether the things that you have going on or that list feels like way more than I could ever handle, whatever. I acknowledge that you are overwhelmed and that sucks. And I'm not just going to tell you to calm down. What I'm going to tell you is do your best to just knock off one thing at a time and count every little victory, and that's one in your column. That's the best. And just keep on moving. Keep on trucking. That's all you can do. There's so much. How do I even want to say it? Say this. There's just so much in the world, and there's only so much of you. And things start to falter and fade quickly when you start to put your time and energy A, into the wrong place, but B, in all of the places. Anytime you're spreading yourself too thin, like the people who are expecting full value of you aren't getting full value of you. And that's not a good image for you to have. It's not a good thing for you to put out. Like, you want to be able to give people what they promised, or what they were promised, or whatever you promised them. You just want to give your best. And when you're spread veil thin, like, you are never going to be able to put 100% into everything. And I've disagreed with that sentiment my whole life, but here I am at 25 saying I was so wrong, and that is so true. And I will try to remember what I'm talking about, and I will tell you more about it after I take a hit of this. Cheers, friends. All right. So you can never put 100% of yourself into everything. That is the truest story ever told. Don't try and convince yourself otherwise. I'm 100% sure that it's so true. You can't give 100% to every single thing. And the more overwhelmed you're feeling, likely the more you are shorting each individual thing that you were promised to. The reason I say that is because for years and years and years I've said, no, I'm a multitasker. Like, I can put 100% of myself into 100% of the things that I'm doing. And honestly, it's done pretty okay for me, or it did pretty okay for me, I should say. Like, I was able to be the leader in a lot of things and be influential in a lot of ways and keep up with my own goals and such, and it was good for me. And here I am, a couple years removed from the college atmosphere, living the quote-unquote adult life, and realizing what things were actually giving because I was putting 100% of myself into multiple things. And what ended up giving was my mental health and my physical health and, just like personal things, myself, so to speak, was what was taking the brunt of the damage or getting the least amount of me because I was pouring 100% of myself into other things. Now, what I'm not trying to say is that you shouldn't involve yourself in a number of things, or you shouldn't put your effort into a lot of places. Like I'm not saying that at all. If you want to spread yourself out and get into a bunch of things, you do it. You deserve it. It's your life. Best of luck to you. And I continue to do that. I've got a couple of podcasts that I work with regularly, some as an editor, and obviously this one as a host. Like I have a lot of other side projects. I have 2 jobs. I have a lot going on. And this year is when I've really started to realize that part of the reason I ended up getting to the low level of health that I was at the end of my time in college, like a lot of those feelings, a lot of those experiences are similar to now, and similar to why I am feeling the way that I'm feeling. So I'm trying hard to be aware of that and move forward with that. Now I'm honestly just rambling because I've again lost where I came from. Again, I'm very high and it's very late. Honestly, I started the main content of this early. I might wrap this episode up a little early. I might call it a night. I'm gonna take a big hit of this, and then I think I'll get into the outro type things. And the outro will either go long or it'll be a short episode. You'll know because you clicked on the episode, and I probably told you how long it was gonna be, but I don't know yet, so I'm gonna find out. Cheers. Well, friends, thank you again for joining me in another truly 11th hour recording. Here I said at 2:25, a mere 9.5 hours before this episode is supposed to go live. Luckily, I have tomorrow to edit it. I just was in a situation that I wasn't going to be able to record tomorrow. I could edit and upload an episode no problem, but I wasn't going to be able to sit down and actually bang out a recording. So, honestly, it's kind of hard to schedule when you recording is hinging on you being high as balls. So if you have a lot of other things to do after you record, a lot of those things aren't going to happen because you're going to be high as balls, which I am right now. So, here I am at 2:25 on the morning that this episode is supposed to release, and I'm just wrapping it up. So thanks for coming along with me on what is bound to sound like an absolutely exhausted version of me who is very, very high, because I am both. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate it. If you like the show, let somebody else know about it. That's the big thing for me. I love organic growth as a content creator, and I'm not in it to get huge. I don't really care. I'm just doing it for fun and doing it because I enjoy doing it. So if you have a friend who you think like, oh man, maybe they'll be into this podcast, let them know about it. I'd appreciate it for sure. Some people like it and some people don't, but if you know who's somebody who might, let them know. And feel free to do the iTunes rating and review thing. Apparently that's good for podcasts. I've yet to see the benefit of it, but feel free to do that for me. Maybe someday I'll be optimistic about it. I have an Instagram. I'm on there at Sesh Cast. Check me out there if you ever want to talk, or shoot me a DM on Instagram. I'm super responsive with DMs, or I try to be within a couple days. Always happy to chat about whatever. Shoot me a DM. I'd love to talk to you. I've got a couple of possible interviews that I'm working with right now. As soon as I get a little bit better equipment, which should hopefully be in the next couple of months, hopefully we'll have a few other folks on the podcast. I've really enjoyed having some some guests on. So hopefully I'll be back into that soon. Gosh, I think that's it. I have 2 stickers left. I'll send them to you if you'd like them. Yeah, I think that's it. I think I'm going to go ahead and hit this, and I'm going to get out of here. And I will be back next week, hopefully with something a little more, a little more energy behind it, a little more gusto, if you will. Cheers, friends. My name is GLDLX. This has been Sesh Cast. Thank you so much for listening.